Welcome to the deep dive. You know when you get that big annual report from a company and you maybe flip towards the back?
Yeah, looking for that auditor's signature.
Exactly. It feels like the final word, doesn't it? The verdict on their financial health.
Yeah.
But wow, there's a lot packed into those few pages.
Oh, absolutely. It's the ultimate trust signal for investors, lenders, everyone really. Or, potentially a massive red flag.
Right. A lot hinges on it. But the language is so specific, it's easy to miss the subtle warnings, isn't it?
It really is. People often see unmodified and think, great, all clear, but it's more nuanced than that.
Okay, so that's our mission today. Using the material you sent over, we want to kind of map out what's actually in an independent auditor's report.
And decode those different opinions they can give.
Yeah, let's figure out what they really mean. We're aiming to build a picture of the whole decision process the auditor goes through.
And it all starts, interestingly, from a couple of core basic principles. Everything else in the report structure flows from these.
Basic principles. Okay, sounds like the right place to start. Let's unpack those. What are they?
Well, they sound simple, but they cover a lot. First is forming an opinion.
Okay, forming an opinion. That's the actual audit work, right? The testing, the evidence.
Exactly. All the field work, the professional skepticism, digging into the numbers. And then the second principle is the expression of opinion.
So actually writing it down, making the formal statement.
Precisely. You gather the facts, then you declare your judgment based on those facts. Can't have one without the other.
And right from that expression, the path splits, doesn't it? It's basically thumbs up or something else.
That's the core decision point. You land on either an unmodified opinion, that's your clean bill of health, or a modified opinion.
Modified meaning.
Problems, meaning the auditor has reservations. Something needs to be flagged, qualified, or maybe even corrected.
Okay, let's start with the ideal scenario first. The gold standard. The unmodified opinion. What does that look like?
That's when the auditor concludes the financial statements are presented fairly, in all material respects, according to the accounting standard.
That's what every company wants. Every CEO.
It's definitely the goal, and thankfully, it's the most common outcome. When the source material mentions a sample, it just means the standard wording used when everything's okay.
Just boilerplate language.
Pretty much. But here's a really key point for you listening. Unmodified doesn't automatically mean the company is thriving financially.
Right, that's crucial. It just means the accounting is right.
Exactly. The numbers follow the rules. The company could still be, struggling badly, but as long as they've accounted for it correctly, they get an unmodified opinion.
A vital distinction. Okay, so the accounting's fine, but that's not the whole story.
Not by a long shot, which is why we need to dig deeper.
And this is where it gets really critical for anyone looking at risk. Let's move into the modified opinions.
Mm-hmm.
What has to happen structurally in the report the moment an auditor decides they can't give that clean opinion?
Okay, so if the opinion is modified, the rules kick in immediately to force transparency. Rule number 1, you must have a section called Basis for Opinion.
Basis for opinion. Non-negotiable.
Absolutely non-negotiable. This is where the auditor explains why. It's their justification for modifying the opinion. They lay out the evidence, the reasoning.
So if you see modified opinion, your eyes should immediately go to that basis section.
That's exactly right. That's where the real story is. And the structure also usually requires a clear summary of the issue within that modified section too.
Got it. Basis and summary. But how bad is modified? You mentioned a scale.
Yes, and understanding the scale really comes down to two technical concepts, materiality and pervasiveness.
Okay, let's break those down quickly. Materiality.
Materiality just means the error or misstatement is big enough that it could influence the decisions someone makes based on those financial statements. An investor, a lender.
Big enough to matter.
Yeah.
And pervasiveness.
Pervasiveness is the key differentiator for the type of modification. It means the problem isn't just isolated. It affects lots of different parts of the financial statements. It kind of contaminates the whole picture, making the statements unreliable as a whole.
Okay, that makes sense. So a big problem in one spot gets one type of opinion.
Right. Material, but not pervasive.
But a big problem that's everywhere gets something much worse.
Exactly. That difference determines which of the three types of modified opinions you get.
Let's go through them. First up, The one for material but not pervasive issues.
That's the qualified opinion. Think of it as an except for opinion.
Except for.
The auditor is saying, look, these financial statements are generally fair, except for this specific issue we've identified. Maybe they couldn't get enough evidence for one particular inventory valuation, for example, but everything else checks out.
So the statements are mostly reliable, just with that one specific carve-out explained in the basis section.
Precisely. Now contrast that with the next level up.
This sounds like the really serious one,
Yeah.
where the problem is pervasive.
It is. This is the adverse opinion, and it's bad. Really bad.
How bad?
It means the auditor has found material misstatements, and those misstatements are also pervasive. The financial statements as a whole are misleading. They do not present fairly.
Wow. So the numbers just can't be trusted at all.
Fundamentally unreliable. An adverse opinion is like the nuclear option for an auditor. It triggers regulatory investigations, stock prices plummet, loans might get called in. It's often the financial death knell for a company.
Okay, that's severe.
Yeah.
And there's a third type. It sounded less like a judgment and more like giving up.
It's a good way to put it. It's the disclaimer of opinion.
Disclaimer, meaning
Meaning the auditor couldn't actually form an opinion at all. They couldn't get enough appropriate audit evidence.
why would that happen?
It's usually due to what's called a scope limitation. Maybe management blocked access to crucial records, or maybe a fire destroyed essential documents. Whatever the reason, the auditor just doesn't have the information to say whether the statements are right or wrong.
So they're not saying it's wrong, like adverse. They're saying we have no idea.
Exactly, we cannot tell you. But the market impact can be almost as negative as an adverse opinion because that level of uncertainty is toxic for investors.
Okay, so that progression is critical for you listening. Qualified is, okay, except for this bit. Adverse is, nope, these are fundamentally wrong. And disclaimer is, we couldn't even figure it out.
And all three, qualified, adverse, disclaimer, absolutely require that detailed basis for opinion section explaining exactly why. That's the core verdict.
Right. Now let's shift gears slightly. Even when the opinion is clean, unmodified auditors sometimes add extra context, right? Especially for big, complex companies. That brings us to key audit matters, or KAMs.
Yes, KAMs. This is a relatively newer requirement in many jurisdictions, and it's designed to make the report more informative.
Informative how? What's their purpose?
Well, they're meant to bridge what used to be called the expectations gap. Investors often wondered what the hardest parts of the audit were, what kept the auditors busy. KAMs address that.
So they highlight the tricky bits.
Exactly. They are the matters that, in the auditor's professional judgment, were of most significance in the audit of the current period's financial statements. It's a window into the high judgment, high-risk areas.
So even with an unmodified opinion, the KAMs section might point out areas that were, like, a real headache to audit.
Precisely. It's about the difficulty of the audit process itself, not necessarily about errors. Think about valuing complex financial instruments or assessing goodwill after a huge acquisition. Those often involve significant judgment and estimation.
Right, very subjective areas.
Those are classic KAMs. Even if the auditor ultimately agrees with management's accounting, the sheer difficulty and judgment involved makes it a key audit matter.
The source material mentioned 3 aspects for handling KAMs: scope, determining, and communicating. How does an auditor decide what gets included?
Well, scope just defines what period the KAMs relate to. Determining is the crucial judgment call, what rises to the level of most significant. It involves looking at areas with high risk of material misstatement, significant management judgment, or significant events during the year.
And communicating.
That dictates how they describe it. For each KAM, the auditor has to explain why it was considered significant and summarize how they addressed it in the audit.
Okay, here's a question then. If a company gets a clean, unmodified opinion, but the KAM section is super long and details lots of really complex, contentious estimates, should you still be worried?
That's the value of KAM. It adds crucial context. The opinion might be technically clean, meaning the accounting complies, but the KAMs tell you about the inherent risks and complexities in the business or its accounting.
So a savvy reader uses KAMs to gauge the risk profile, even with a pass mark on the opinion itself.
Absolutely. It provides insight beyond just the bottom line opinion. It's essential context.
Got it. So KAMs are about audit difficulty and judgment areas. Now, what about the other sections, sometimes added emphasis of matter and other matters? How are they different?
This is a common point of confusion. While KAMs focus on the audit process, emphasis of matter and other matter paragraphs focus on drawing attention to something already disclosed correctly by management in the financial statements or notes.
Ah, so the information's already there. The auditors just highlighting it, putting a spotlight on it.
Exactly. They aren't adding new info. They're amplifying something crucial for understanding the financial statements that management has already disclosed appropriately.
Can you give an example? What triggers an emphasis of matter paragraph?
The classic and probably most significant example is going concern uncertainty.
Meaning doubts about whether the company can survive.
Precisely. If management includes a note in the financial statements discussing significant doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern for the next year, and the auditor agrees the disclosure is adequate.
Then the auditor adds an emphasis of matter paragraph pointing straight to that note.
Yes. To make absolutely sure the reader sees that critical disclosure. Other examples might include a major catastrophe after year-end or unusually important litigation.
And the source mentions specific rules here too. Placement, circumstances, when used.
Right. Placement is key. These paragraphs must appear immediately after the opinion paragraph, so they're prominent. Circumstances define when it's appropriate, like that going concern issue, provided management's disclosure is adequate. And when used confirms it's only for matters the auditor deems fundamental to the user's understanding.
Okay, let me see if I have this straight for you listening. An unmodified opinion means the accounting is fair. A modified opinion, qualified adverse disclaimer, means there's a problem explained in the basis for opinion. KAMs highlight difficult audit areas even if the opinion is clean. An emphasis of matter points to crucial disclosures already in the notes, like going concern.
That's a perfect summary. You see how the whole structure builds, from the basic principles of forming and expressing an opinion to the core verdict, unmodified, modified, and then adding layers of necessary context with KAMs and emphasis of matter. It's all designed for clarity and transparency.
It really maps it all out. You start with the conclusion, the opinion, and then you get the justification if needed basis, the risk insights, KAM, and the critical flags, emphasis of matter.
The whole system aims to give you, the reader, a comprehensive, justified, and properly contextualized picture based on the audit.
We've definitely dissected the anatomy of this report now.
And thinking about it, it really makes you consider the sheer power packed into those opinion words, doesn't it? Unmodified, qualified, adverse, disclaimer.
Huge implications.
The market hangs on those words. Billions can be made or lost based on which one the auditor chooses. How much weight should they carry? It's a big question.
It really is. Well, we hope this deep dive gives you the map you need. Next time you look at a financial statement, don't just glance at the opinion type. If it's modified, hunt down that basis for opinion, and always, always read the key audit matters and any emphasis of matter paragraphs.
That's where the deeper story often lies.
Absolutely. That's where the real understanding begins.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.